As you can see, I'm a Halloween fanatic. This is supposed to be a Dragon Quest X cosplay. While the main protagonists embark on grand adventures, it's the stories of non-playable characters that frequently resonate with us as players. These side stories, which are sometimes brief or insignificant to the main game, delve deeply into the themes of trauma, helplessness, and a longing for happiness. In today's video, we will be exploring that. In Dragon Quest IX, the hero arrives in Coffinwell, a town stricken by a deadly plague. There, they meet Dr. Fleming, a reclusive archaeologist researching the outbreak. Though brilliant, Fleming is eccentric and socially withdrawn, much to the frustration of the town's mayor, especially since Fleming is married to his daughter, Katerina. Fleming suspects the source of the illness lies in the Quarren Tomb, a sealed tomb west of town. The hero agrees to serve as his bodyguard during the investigation. Inside they discover a broken pot, the seal that once contained the raging contagion, a malevolent spirit released by a recent earthquake. As Fleming attempts to reassemble the pot, the contagion attacks. The party defeats and reseals it, but the damage is already done. Upon returning to Coffinwell, they learn that Katerina has succumbed to the plague. Fleming, overcome with guilt, isolates himself and does not attend her funeral. That night, Katerina's spirit appears to the hero and asks them to guide Fleming through the town to show him the lives he helped save. Touched by the gratitude of the townspeople, Fleming begins to heal. He vows to be more present in the community and reconciles with the mayor. Fleming's story shows intense grief of a lover, isolation, redemption, and renewed purpose. As players, we get to experience the deep regret of not being able to save people or being too occupied with our endeavors to see them one last time before death. And I'm sure every viewer has a loved one or friend they don't check in on enough, and we truly never know when it's too late before it's the last time we see them. Clemens, a skilled fighter from Regenstein, leaves the village to gather supplies despite warnings from his wife Helga, formerly Millie, about increasing dangerous monsters. Before departing, he promises they'll announce their marriage upon his return. While he's away, a mysterious grey rain falls, turning the entire village, including Helga, to stone. Clemens narrowly avoids the rain and returns to find the town petrified. He searches for a cure and discovers the angel tear, but the statues have weathered beyond recovery. Grieving and unable to save anyone, Clemens chooses to remain in Regenstein, waiting for death. 50 years into the future, the hero's party encounters Clemens, who tells them the village cannot be saved. Ignoring his warning, the party uses an angel tear and a young boy named Felix emerges from hiding. Clemens recognizes him and the two set out together to warn other towns about the grey rain. Later they arrive in Green Thumb Gardens, where their warning goes unheeded. The grey rain falls again, petrifying the villagers. In the past era of Aeolus Vale, a diary recounts Felix's arrival and his dire warning about the rain. The writer initially doubts the story but is swayed by Felix's conviction. Clemens is notably absent by this time, implying he died before Felix reached the valley. Clemens' story is extremely sad and shows the intense grief of losing a family and community, the waste of life he experienced out of hope, and how time is not always a great healer. Dragon Quest VII is known for its dark storytelling and focuses heavily on the cruelty of time, and Clemens is a standout example of this. In Dragon Quest VII, Thaddeus is the captain of Faraday's army, while his brother Autonomous is a reclusive inventor living west of the kingdom. Autonomous was once romantically involved with Princess Ellie of Faraday, but she died in a hunting accident under Thaddeus's watch. Her death deeply affected Autonomous, leading him to isolate himself and focus on building machines. Before the party arrives, Faraday is under siege by automata, mechanical soldiers from the Dark World. With morale low and casualties mounting, the king hires mercenaries to support the army. The party meets Thaddeus during a strategy briefing, and after joining the mercenaries, they learn that Autonomous may hold the key to defeating the automata. Despite Thaddeus's belief that Autonomous won't help, the party visits the Institute of Autometry. There, they find him working on a robot named Ellie, an homage to his past lover. Autonomous shows no concern for Faraday, claiming to empathize more with machines than people. During the ongoing battle, the automata suddenly begin attacking each other. Autonomous and Thaddeus arrive at the stronghold with Ellie, who disables the enemy units with her signal. The party succeeds in halting the invasion. In the present, the Institute lies abandoned, designated a no-man's land. Autonomous has long since died, his remains resting in bed. Ellie, unaware of his death, continues making soup every day in the belief it will heal him, not understanding what human death means. This story is especially tragic and sad because Autonomous was a lonely man grieving his lover and tried to relive the memory of her through a robot, blurring the lines of machine and human capacity for emotion. Ellie, being a mere robot, does not have the program capability to understand love or why her master is not accepting the soup. She is bound to a life of making soup every day for the rest of eternity. Marion Bloom is the only daughter of the wealthy Bloom family. She was a frail and unwell young girl who spent most of her life isolated indoors. Her only friend was a doll named Marionette, crafted to look identical to her. As her health deteriorated, Marion was presented with a fig, in the hopes that the fig would heal her of her ailments. Instead of consuming it, she gave it to her doll so Marionette could come to life. Marionette soon became animated, but Marion passed away not too long afterwards, entrusting her doll to live the life she could not. Assuming Marion's identity, she would interact with the townspeople who believed her to be the real Marion. Naively, Marionette was taken advantage of by them, as they would pretend to be her friends in order to gain some of her wealth, and she believed them each time. When the protagonist arrives in Bloomingdale seeking a ship, Marionette becomes distressed and orders the townspeople to leave her house, and locks herself away in her room due to the hero being a Celestian. As she blames Marion's death on the Celestians based off a misunderstood concept she made before she passed away. She is then kidnapped by thieves who mistake her for the wealthy Marion. The hero, with the help of Randolph, a retired toy maker who had crafted Marionette, discovers Marionette's true nature. A ghost of the real Marion explains the truth, revealing that Marionette was brought to life by the fig and had been living in her place. In the depths of the bad cave, Marionette encounters the monstrous tarantula. In her innocence, she attempts to befriend the creature but is attacked. The hero defeats the tarantula and Marionette is saved. Upon returning to Bloomingdale, Marionette informs the townspeople that she is leaving for a journey, giving up the fig and returning to her original form as a lifeless doll. The townspeople, unaware of the truth, believe Marion has gone away, leaving them in blissful ignorance. The story of Marion and Marionette serves as a poignant exploration of the human desire for connection and the complexities of identity. It highlights the consequences of naivety, being exploited for the benefit of others, and wishes made in desperation. The townspeople's misunderstanding and Marionette's return to her doll form underscore the themes of memory, identity, and the passage of time. After Rapthorn was sealed into the scepter by the Seven Sages, the sage Koopas passed his powers to his apprentice, Cletus Diakonos, an ancestor of Dominico. Stripped of his magic, Koopas vanished, but he left behind a spell binding their bloodlines so their descendants might one day be connected. Generations later, David, a humble and kind-hearted youth from Tryon Gully, left home and wandered the world for 6 months before arriving in Arcadia. Destitute and exhausted, he was taken in by Domenico, a powerful magician, and became his servant. Domenico belittled and mistreated him, often shouting at him for being a stupid peasant. And in the original copy of Dragon Quest VIII on the PS2, Domenico makes David get on his hands and knees and eat dog food whilst he laughed at him.
Not like that! On your hands and knees. And look like you're enjoying it. That's it! It suits you, David.
This was later taken out for censorship issues. Despite the abuse, David remained loyal and even cared for his master's dog, Sir Leopold. When evil Jessica arrived in Arcadia, she sought out Kupus's descendants and identified David as the real descendant. The hero and party intervened before she could harm him. After Jessica was freed from Rapthorn's control, the scepter disappeared in the chaos and Sir Leopold went missing. David set out to find the dog, whilst Domenico sank into despair. Eventually, Sir Leopold, now possessed by Rapthorn through the scepter, returned and fatally attacked David outside the mansion.
Now, there are only two left. You will interfere no more.
As he lay dying, David urged the hero to find Sir Leopold, calling him the only thing that makes Master Domenico happy.
Please, go after Sir Leopold. He's the only one who makes Master Domenico happy. Without Sir Leopold, Master Domenico would be so unhappy. Master...
When Domenico found David's body, he realized too late that David had inherited Kupus's power, not him. Overcome with guilt and sorrow, he acknowledged his cruelty and begged the hero to defeat Sir Leopold, who he now called no longer my Sir Leopold, to avenge David's death. This story is particularly tragic as David is a victim of abuse at the hands of a person with power and resources, and there is little to no mention of David having any parents in game, so he was potentially an orphan too. He was publicly humiliated and forced to do acts that stripped him of his dignity. He was less of a servant and more of a slave with no autonomy. Domenico's jealousy and mistreatment of David when he is the real descendant reminds me of a Cinderella story and is reminiscent of how bullies often target the most harmless, kind people who often are more spiritually in tune and have the most potential. Unfortunately, Sir Leopold finished the job before he could unlock it. In Dragon Quest IV, Rose is an elf gifted with the rare ability to cry ruby tears, crystallized expressions of her deepest emotions. Humans, eager to profit from her gifts, repeatedly kidnapped and abused her, yet their efforts were in vain as her tears shattered upon being touched by their greedy hands. She was eventually rescued by Sorrow, a powerful demon who fell in love with her, naming her Rose after his hometown of Rose Hill. He brought her there for protection, building her a hidden sanctuary guarded by the loyal Sir Rosegarden. A secret chamber accessible only via the Flute of Revelation kept her safe from the outside world. Though Rose disagreed with Sorrow's growing hatred for humanity and his plans to eradicate them, she believed in his goodness and hoped he might change. Her compassion and quiet hope stood in contrast to his violent resolve. Before reconciliation was possible, Ammon, Sorrow's treacherous retainer, murdered Rose to unhinge Sorrow emotionally. Her death drove Sorrow to use the secret of evolution on himself, setting in motion a tragic descent into evil that Ammon intended to exploit for his own gain. He became the Manslayer, seeking to resurrect Estark. Rose's story shows the cruel exploitation of another person's gifts, and how she was repetitively used as a pawn for other people's gain, whether that be monetary gain or emotional leverage over Sorrow. It's about compassion amidst cruelty, and her death marks the turning point on Sorrow's entire character that leads to catastrophe, demonstrating the tragic cost of love twisted by vengeance, a vengeance that caused global consequence, as Sorrow set out to annihilate the human race. Michelle is a mermaid from the underwater city of Nautica. She is usually found sat on the rocks around a mysterious isle called the Strand. Michelle encounters an injured fisherman called Kainoa and rescues Kainoa from drowning and nurses him back to health. Over time, they both fall in love with each other and express their desire to get married. Kainoa revealed to Michelle that he was engaged to the chief's daughter and wanted to cancel their marriage arrangements. Kainoa asked Michelle to come to land, but she alerted him that she was able to gain human legs, but at the expense of her life, as she would dissolve into sea foam if she was ever to touch water again. He understood how dangerous it was and promised to return and join her at sea, but he first had to return to his home of Honolulu. Michelle is filled with hope and waits for her foreign lover to return. This would be the last time Michelle sees him, but she doesn't know that. When Kainoa came back to Honolulu, he informed his people of who saved him. The townsfolk were very superstitious and afraid, believing Kainoa was under a mermaid's spell. The townsfolk burned his boat and banished him from the village as punishment for associating with a mermaid. The chief's daughter married another man and soon became pregnant by him. Nearing her birth, awful storms plagued the island, wiping out many people including the chief and his son-in-law. The chief's daughter threw herself into the sea out of pure grief. Kainoa saw her and rescued her, but it was too late. The chief's daughter died in childbirth and Kainoa became a single father. The people of Honolulu saw Kainoa with the newborn and assumed it was a product of Michelle, which made the residents of Honolulu shun Kainoa further. Kainoa couldn't leave the baby, so he spent his life raising the child. His love for Michelle never faded, and he painted a portrait of her beneath the moonlight and created a wedding veil. Kainoa eventually died, which allowed his adopted daughter to finally be accepted back into society. To make money, she told the village's superstitious version of Kainoa's encounter with Michelle and how she stole his heart and soul, villainizing the race of mermaids as evil witches. This story was told to young children, which would condition them to be terrified and distraught.
Mermaids are scary! Whoa! The mermaid's coming to steal our souls! Run!
She gave birth to a son and named him Kainui, nicknaming him Kai after her adopted father. Kai grew up hating Michelle for all that he thought she had done to his family. Michelle did not know of these events and faithfully waited for Kainoa for many passing generations. Assuming this shows that Michelle was blissfully aware of the fragility and shortness of human life expectancy, as she has a lifespan of 500 years. The luminary and his crew come across Michelle at the Strand during their adventure and encounter the mermaid. She says if they find Kainoa, she will grant them access to Nautica. The luminary travels to Honolulu only to learn of Michelle and Kainoa's story. They meet Kainui, who makes his hatred for Michelle very overt, but backs down and shows them the veil his grandfather made for her. The luminary returns with the veil to Michelle and is given the choice: lie to Michelle or tell her the truth. If the luminary lies, Michelle will believe him and will take them to Nautica, but Michelle will continue to wait for her long-dead lover until the end of time.
I'll stay right here, although I know my darling's running late. A mermaid lives 500 years. I have the time to wait.
If the luminary tells the truth, Michelle at first refuses to believe him. She was taken to Honolulu by the party. Kai sees her sitting upon the rocks and is enchanted by the sight. At first, Michelle is overjoyed, believing Kai is her lost love. She quickly realizes that it is not the right man. Kai confirms Michelle's fears and points to Kainoa's gravestone. Her heart is shattered. Michelle sings a haunting melody and her shimmering fishtail transforms into human legs. She goes to Kainoa's grave and kisses it to say goodbye. She walks back towards the sea and dives into the water and dissolves into sea foam, ending her life. Michelle's story is incredibly upsetting and highlights the deep trauma of unrequited love, grief, and a lack of closure. The thing that stood out to me the most is that there is little to no mention of any other mermaids ever coming to check on her. It seems Michelle didn't really have any friends, and she chose death over returning to Nautica to be with the rest of her people. Michelle could be interpreted as male-centered, anxiously attached, isolated, and naive, and the term Honolulu sounds like a spin on lonely or loner. This unfortunate tale shows the consequences of continuing life without any closure for heartbreak, and is a high-ranking tragedy in the NPC world of Dragon Quest. Personally, I find her to have the most tragic story of all NPCs, because whilst other characters may have passed away or been murdered, she is one of, if not the only character in the franchise who successfully took their own life. The NPCs of the Dragon Quest series have some of the most emotionally moving stories in the entire franchise. and shows how even minor characters irrelevant to the main plot can have their own troubles and traumas. Through their tales of love, loss, and a hope for a better life, they enrich the game's world and provide players with a narrative that lingers long after the game is completed. These characters remind us that even in a world filled with monsters and heroes, the most painful stories are often those of the unseen, quiet, and forgotten.